I never imagined I'd find myself pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet, but here I am. For the past 8 years, I've been married to my wife, Amanda. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but I always thought we were solid. That was until a few weeks ago when everything I thought I knew about my marriage started to unravel. It all began with subtle changes. Amanda had been distant lately, our conversations shorter, filled with excuses about being too tired, and an unusual obsession with her phone. When I asked her about it, she'd brush it off, saying she was just stressed from work. I wanted to believe her. I really did. Then one night, she casually mentioned that her coworker, Lauren, was throwing a surprise party for her boyfriend's birthday. "It's just a small gathering," Amanda had said, smiling. "Nothing fancy. You don't need to come. It's mostly their friends." Normally, I wouldn't think twice about it. Amanda often went to work events without me, and I trusted her, or at least I used to. But something about the way she said it felt off. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she avoided my gaze, and how quickly she changed the subject afterward. "Lauren's boyfriend, huh?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "What's his name again?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second, but it was enough for me to notice. Josh. You've never met him." I nodded, pretending to drop the subject, but my gut was telling me something wasn't right. I didn't press her further, though. Instead, I decided to dig a little deeper on my own. The day of the party, Amanda left the house in a rush, dressed in a way that felt a little too polished for a casual get-together. As soon as she was gone, I called up Lauren. We'd met a few times at work events, so I figured it wouldn't seem too strange. "Hey Lauren, it's Ryan. Amanda mentioned the party tonight, and I was thinking about swinging by to surprise her. Where's it happening again?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Party," Lauren finally said, sounding genuinely confused. "I didn't plan any party." "Are you sure she said it was me?" My stomach dropped. I managed to mumble something about a misunderstanding before hanging up. My mind was racing. If Lauren wasn't throwing a party, then where was Amanda going? And who was she going with? I paced around the house for what felt like hours, debating what to do. Part of me wanted to call her out immediately, but another part, the part that needed to know the truth, decided to wait. Later that evening, Amanda texted me. "Party's going great. I'll be home late. Don't wait up." I stared at the message, my heart pounding. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them sitting at home. So I decided to take a chance. I called up a friend of mine, Ethan, who always seemed to know what was going on around town. "Hey Ethan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You wouldn't happen to know of any big gatherings happening tonight, would you?" Ethan chuckled. "Funny you ask. There's a surprise party over at that fancy place downtown, Lucas's Lounge. Apparently, it's pretty exclusive." "Why?" I asked. "Just curious," I said, my mind already made up. When I arrived at Lucas's Lounge, the place was buzzing with energy. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses spilled out onto the sidewalk as I stepped inside. I scanned the room, my eyes darting from face to face, searching for Amanda. And then I saw her. She was sitting at a table near the back, laughing at something the man across from her had said. She leaned forward, her hand brushing his arm in a way that sent a jolt of anger through me. She didn't look like someone at a casual work event. She looked like a woman on a date. But instead of storming over, I forced myself to stay calm. I wasn't here to make a scene, not yet. I needed to play this carefully, to make sure there was no way she could talk her way out of this. And that's when the idea hit me. I flagged down a waiter and handed him my wedding ring. "Take this to that table," I said, nodding toward Amanda and her mystery man. "Tell her it's from her husband." The waiter gave me a curious look, but didn't argue. As I watched him walk toward the table, my heart pounded in my chest. This was it. The moment everything would come to light. What happened next would leave the entire room in stunned silence. I stayed back in the shadows, watching the waiter approach Amanda's table. She was mid-laugh, leaning closer to the man sitting across from her, a guy I didn't recognize. He was handsome, sharply dressed, and clearly enjoying himself. I felt my fists clench, but I forced myself to stay calm. I wanted her to feel the weight of what was coming. The waiter stopped at their table and leaned slightly toward Amanda. I couldn't hear his exact words, but I saw the moment she froze. Her laughter died instantly, her hand retracting from the man's arm as if she'd been caught red-handed, which, of course, she had. Then the waiter placed the small silver tray in front of her. My wedding ring sat there, glinting under the soft glow of the restaurant lights. Amanda's face drained of all color. She stared at the ring as though it were a bomb about to go off. The man across from her looked confused, glancing between her and the tray. I stepped forward then, my steps slow and deliberate, making sure she saw me coming. The moment her eyes met mine, I could see the panic setting in. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say something, but no sound came out. The man turned to look at me, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Ryan," Amanda finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "Surprise," I said coolly, stopping just a few feet from their table. The room had gone eerily quiet, the hum of conversations and laughter now replaced by murmurs as people noticed the unfolding drama. The man, let's call him Mr. Perfect, stood up, clearly unsure of what was happening. "Who's this?" he asked, looking at Amanda. I let out a humorless chuckle. "I'm her husband," I said, emphasizing the last word. "Who are you?" His face flushed, and he took a small step back. "I didn't know she was married," he stammered, glancing at Amanda for confirmation. Amanda's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Ryan, please," she said, her voice shaking. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty damn clear." The tension in the room was palpable. Amanda was visibly trembling now, her hands clutching the edge of the table as if it could somehow anchor her. Mr. Perfect looked like he wanted to disappear, his gaze darting toward the exit. "I think you should leave," I told him, my tone calm but firm. "This is between me and my wife." He didn't argue. Without another word, he grabbed his coat and practically ran out of the restaurant. Amanda watched him go, her face crumpling as if realizing that her safety net had just vanished. Once he was gone, I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, keeping my gaze locked on hers. She flinched under the intensity of my stare, her hands trembling as she fumbled to pick up the ring from the tray. "Ryan," she began, her voice desperate. I can explain." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "Go ahead," I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. "Explain." She swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. "It's not what you think," she said finally. "He's just a friend from work. We were talking about a project." "A project?" I repeated, my tone flat. "Over dinner at an expensive restaurant, with no mention of Lauren's party? Is that the project you're referring to?" Her face crumpled, and I could see tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice breaking. It just got out of control." I shook my head, my anger bubbling to the surface. "You didn't mean for it to happen? You didn't mean to lie to me, to sneak around behind my back, to disrespect our marriage?" Her tears were falling freely now, but I didn't feel sorry for her. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me with crocodile tears. The murmurs in the restaurant had grown louder, the other patrons clearly invested in the drama playing out before them. Amanda noticed too, her eyes darting nervously toward the growing crowd. "Ryan," she pleaded, lowering her voice. "Can we talk about this at home, please?" I stood, pushing my chair back with deliberate slowness. "No, Amanda," I said, my voice steady. "We'll talk about this now. You made your choices, and now you get to deal with the consequences." Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't care. I'd given her my love, my trust, and she'd thrown it all away for what? A fling? Attention? Whatever excuse she came up with, it didn't matter anymore. "I'll see you at home," I said finally, turning and walking toward the exit. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The sound of her crying and the whispers of the onlookers told me everything I needed to know. When I got home, the house felt emptier than ever, but I didn't feel sad or defeated. I felt relieved. The truth was out, and now I could finally start figuring out what came next. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, replaying every moment of the confrontation at the restaurant. The image of Amanda's panicked face and her feeble excuses stuck with me. I knew she'd eventually come home, but I wasn't sure I was ready to face her again. I was done with the lies, done with pretending things were fine. Around 2 a.m., I heard the car pull into the driveway. A few minutes later, the front door opened, and Amanda stepped inside. She hesitated in the entryway, probably trying to gauge my mood, before slowly making her way to the living room. "Ryan," she started softly, her voice hoarse from crying. I interrupted, holding up a hand. "No more lies, Amanda. No more excuses. I want the truth, all of it." She stood there for a moment, frozen, before sinking onto the couch across from me. Her hands were trembling, and she couldn't meet my eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "Start from the beginning," I demanded. "How long?" Her shoulders slumped, and the tears started again. "A few months," she admitted. "It started at work. He paid attention to me in a way I hadn't felt in so long. I know that doesn't justify it, but you chose him anyway." I finished, my voice cold. "You chose to lie to me, to throw away everything we built." She nodded, sobbing quietly. "I was stupid, selfish, and I hate myself for it." I stared at her, the woman I'd once thought I'd spend my life with, and felt a mix of anger and sadness. "Why didn't you just tell me you were unhappy?" I asked. "Why didn't you talk to me instead of going behind my back?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I didn't think you'd care. I thought you'd stop loving me." Her words hit like a punch to the gut, but I didn't let it show. "You had no right to make that assumption," I said firmly. "And you certainly had no right to betray me because of it." The conversation went on for hours, and by the time the sun rose, I felt completely drained. Amanda begged for forgiveness, promised she'd do whatever it took to fix things, but I wasn't ready to give her an answer. I needed time to figure out what I wanted, what I deserved. "Go to bed," I told her finally. "We'll talk more later." She nodded, wiping her tears, and disappeared upstairs. I stayed on the couch, staring at the wedding photo on the wall and wondering how everything had gone so wrong. The morning after our conversation, the house felt suffocatingly quiet. Amanda stayed upstairs, probably trying to give me space, but the silence only gave me more time to think. Every memory of our marriage felt tainted now, every shared laugh or tender moment overshadowed by her betrayal. I spent the day avoiding her, burying myself in anything that could keep my mind occupied. I cleaned the garage, took a long drive, and even went to the gym, something I hadn't done in months. But no matter what I did, the image of Amanda with that man kept creeping back into my mind. By the time I returned home, she was waiting for me in the kitchen. She looked exhausted, her eyes red and puffy, but there was a determination in her expression I hadn't seen before. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady. I sighed, setting my keys on the counter. "What else is there to say?" "I know I messed up," she began, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I know I've destroyed your trust, and I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, if at all. But I need you to know that I'm not giving up on us." Her words hung in the air, but they didn't have the impact she probably hoped for. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "And what exactly does not giving up look like, Amanda? Because right now, all I see is a broken marriage and a wife who lied to my face." She flinched at my words, but didn't back down. "It means I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. Counseling, therapy, whatever you need. I'll quit my job if that's what it takes. I can't lose you, Ryan." Her desperation was palpable, and for a brief moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. But sympathy wasn't enough. "You should have thought about that before you started sneaking around," I said coldly. "Do you even understand what you've done to me? To us?" "I do," she said, tears streaming down her face. "And I hate myself for it every second of every day. Please, Ryan, give me a chance to fix this." I stared at her, searching her face for any sign of the woman I'd married, the woman I thought I knew. But all I saw was someone who'd broken my heart and was now scrambling to pick up the pieces. "I don't know if I can," I said finally. "I don't know if I even want to." That night, I slept in the guest room again. The bed felt cold and unfamiliar, but it was better than sharing a room with someone I couldn't trust. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, I realized that I couldn't keep living like this. Something had to change. The next morning, I made a decision. It wasn't one I'd come to lightly, but it was the only way I could start moving forward. I left Amanda a note on the kitchen counter, telling her I needed space and would be staying with a friend for a while. When I left the house, I didn't look back. The drive to my friend Mark's place felt surreal. Mark had been my best friend since college, someone I could count on no matter what. When I told him what had happened, he didn't ask questions. He just said, "Come over, stay as long as you need." The relief of being in a different space was immediate. Mark handed me a beer and sat down across from me. "So," he said, keeping his tone light, "you want to talk about it? Or do we just sit here and watch the game?" I took a sip of the beer, staring at the screen without really seeing it. "She's begging me to forgive her," I said after a long pause. She says she'll do anything to fix it. But I don't even know if I want to try. Mark nodded, his expression thoughtful. Look, man, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you've got to figure out what's best for you. Not for her, not for anyone else, just you. His words stuck with me. For so long, I've been trying to hold everything together, to be the perfect husband, to make sure Amanda was happy. But where had that gotten me? In a guest room, staring at the wreckage of my marriage. The days turned into a week, and while the pain didn't disappear, it started to feel more manageable. I threw myself into work, spent time with Mark, and even reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen in years. It felt good to focus on myself for once, to remember who I was outside of my marriage. Amanda texted me a few times each day, her messages alternating between apologies, pleas, and updates about the house. I responded politely, but kept my answers short. I wasn't ready to deal with her yet, not until I knew what I wanted. One evening, I got a message from Amanda that caught me off guard. I've scheduled a therapy session for us. Please consider coming. I know I've hurt you, but I want to at least try to repair this. If nothing else, it'll give us both clarity. I stared at the message for a long time, torn between anger and curiosity. Therapy? I wasn't sure if I believed it would help, but part of me felt like I owed it to myself to hear her out, to see if there was any chance of salvaging what we had. The following week, I agreed to meet her at the therapist's office. It was a small, cozy space, and the therapist, Dr. Wallace, greeted us with a calm, professional demeanor. Amanda looked nervous, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as we sat down. I'm here for answers, I said bluntly, cutting through the awkward silence. Not for reconciliation. I just want to understand why she did what she did. Amanda flinched at my words, but nodded. That's fair, she said quietly. Dr. Wallace guided the session, helping us unpack the events that led to the betrayal. Amanda admitted to feeling neglected, unappreciated, and disconnected from me. She didn't blame me directly, at least not entirely, but she also didn't shy away from owning her mistakes. I made a terrible choice, she said, her voice breaking. But it wasn't because I didn't love you, Ryan. It was because I didn't know how to handle what I was feeling, and instead of talking to you, I ran to someone else. It was selfish and wrong, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Her words were raw, but they didn't erase the damage. I told her as much, and for the first time, I saw a real understanding in her eyes. She wasn't just sorry for getting caught. She was sorry for breaking something she couldn't fix. As I left the session that day, I didn't feel the closure I'd hoped for, but I did feel a sense of clarity. Amanda was willing to do the work to make things right, but the question was whether I wanted to let her. And for the first time, I realized that maybe I didn't. After the therapy session, I took a long drive, letting my thoughts swirl. Amanda's words lingered in my mind, but they didn't soothe the ache. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to rebuild what we had. It felt like trying to piece together shattered glass. No matter how carefully you worked, the cracks would always show. When I got back to Mark's place, he didn't ask questions. Instead, he handed me a beer and nodded toward the couch. Figured you could use this. I sank into the cushions and stared at the label on the bottle, my thoughts heavy. She wants to fix it, I said finally. She's saying all the right things, but I don't know if it's enough. Mark tilted his head, considering my words. Do you want to fix it? He asked. Because it doesn't matter what she says if your heart's not in it. That was the question, wasn't it? Did I want to fight for this marriage, or was I ready to let it go? For so long, I'd been defined by my relationship with Amanda, by the life we'd built together. The idea of walking away was terrifying, but so was the thought of staying and never feeling the same trust or love again. I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. The next day, I texted Amanda and asked to meet at the house. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I knew I couldn't keep her in limbo forever. She deserved an answer, whatever that answer was. When I walked in, she was sitting at the dining table, the same table where we'd shared so many meals and conversations over the years. Her eyes were red, and she looked like she hadn't slept, but she stood up as soon as she saw me. Ryan, she began, her voice trembling. Thank you for coming. I nodded, sitting down across from her. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the silence heavy with unspoken words. I've been thinking a lot, I said finally, my voice steady. About us, about what happened, and about what I want. And the truth is, I don't know if I can move past this, Amanda. Her face crumpled, and tears filled her eyes. Ryan, please. I know I've hurt you, and I know it's not fair to ask for another chance, but I love you. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. I believe you're sorry, I said, and I believe you love me in your own way. But love isn't enough, Amanda. Trust is what makes a marriage, and right now, I don't trust you. Her tears spilled over, but she didn't interrupt. She just nodded, her hands gripping the edge of the table as if it could anchor her. I need time, I continued. Time to figure out if this is something I can forgive. But I'm not making any promises. If we do try, it's going to take a lot of work, and I don't know if I'll ever feel the same. Her sobs grew louder, but she managed to choke out. I'll do whatever it takes, Ryan. Just please, don't give up on us. That night, I packed up a few more things and went back to Mark's place. Amanda's pleas echoed in my mind, but I knew I needed space to process everything. I wasn't ready to give her an answer, but I also wasn't ready to walk away completely. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope, not for the marriage necessarily, but for myself. No matter what happened, I knew I'd come out of this stronger. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Amanda texted me every day, pouring her heart out and asking for updates, but I needed the space. Staying at Mark's gave me time to breathe, to reflect, and most importantly, to focus on myself for the first time in years. At work, I threw myself into projects I'd neglected. After hours, I spent time catching up with old friends, hitting the gym, and exploring hobbies I'd abandoned during the chaos of my marriage. Slowly, the fog of betrayal began to lift, and I started to feel like I was reclaiming the person I used to be before Amanda's lies consumed my life. But even as I rebuilt my routine, the question lingered. Could I ever forgive her? One Friday night, Mark and I were sitting on the patio, sharing a couple of beers, when he finally broke the silence. You seem lighter these days, he said, glancing at me. More like yourself. I nodded, staring out at the darkening sky. It's been good to step back, I admitted. But part of me feels like I'm just running away from dealing with the real problem. Mark shrugged. Sometimes you need distance to get perspective. But eventually, yeah, you'll have to decide what's holding you back. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I guess I don't know if forgiveness is even possible. And if it is, I don't know if it's worth it. Trust is gone, and I don't know if I can ever look at her the same way again. Mark took a sip of his beer before responding. The way I see it, forgiveness isn't about her. It's about you. You don't have to stay with her to forgive her. Sometimes forgiveness just means letting go so you can move on. His words stuck with me long after he'd gone to bed. I realized that I'd been looking at forgiveness as an all-or-nothing decision. Stay with Amanda and try to fix the marriage, or cut her out completely and hold on to the bitterness forever. But maybe there was a middle ground. Maybe forgiveness could be about finding peace for myself, regardless of what happened to us. The next day, I texted Amanda and asked to meet her at the house. She replied almost instantly, her eagerness clear even in the short message. When I arrived, she was already waiting, pacing nervously in the living room. She froze when she saw me, her face a mix of hope and fear. Ryan, she began, her voice shaky. Thank you for coming. I need to say something. I interrupted, holding up a hand. And I need you to listen. She nodded quickly, sitting down and clasping her hands in her lap. I've been thinking a lot about everything, I said, keeping my voice steady. About what you did, about what it says about our marriage, and about whether I can move forward from this. And here's the truth. I don't know if I can. But what I do know is that I can't keep living in this limbo. Her face crumpled, but she didn't speak, her eyes locked on mine. I've decided to forgive you, I continued, the words surprising even myself. Not for you, but for me. I don't want to carry this anger and resentment forever. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean things go back to the way they were. What does that mean? She whispered, tears streaming down her face. It means we need a break, I said firmly. Real space, not just me crashing at Mark's. I need time to figure out what I want. And you need time to figure out who you are without this mess hanging over us. Maybe we'll find our way back to each other, or maybe we won't. But right now, we're not doing either of us any favors by forcing something that isn't working. Amanda sobbed quietly, nodding as she tried to process my words. I'll do whatever it takes, Ryan, even if it means letting you go. Her honesty surprised me, but it also gave me a sense of closure. For the first time, it felt like we were on the same page, not as a couple, but as two people trying to navigate a painful situation with some semblance of dignity. That night, I packed the last of my things and moved into a temporary apartment. It wasn't the fresh start I'd imagined, but it was a step forward. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was choosing my own path, one that wasn't defined by Amanda's actions or my own pain. The first night in my new apartment felt strange. The space was small, minimalist, and lacked the warmth of the home Amanda and I had shared, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I had a space that was entirely my own, a place where I could think, reflect, and rebuild without the constant reminder of betrayal lingering in the air. I spent the first few days settling in, unpacking boxes, and slowly making the space feel like home. I hung up photos of my friends and family, bought a few plants to brighten the place, and even started cooking meals for myself, something I hadn't done in ages. The routine was simple but grounding, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. Amanda respected my request for space, which I appreciated. The texts stopped, and the calls ceased. In their absence, I found clarity. I missed certain aspects of our life together, the laughter, the shared moments, the sense of partnership. But I also realized that those moments were built on a foundation of trust that no longer existed. Without that foundation, everything else felt hollow. One evening, as I was walking through the park near my apartment, I ran into an old friend from college, Emily. We hadn't spoken in years, but the familiarity of her smile brought a wave of comfort I didn't expect. We spent hours catching up, reminiscing about old times and laughing over stories we'd almost forgotten. By the end of the night, she asked the question I'd been avoiding with everyone else. "How's Amanda?" I hesitated before answering, unsure of how much to share. "We're figuring things out," I said finally. "But it's been tough." Emily nodded, her expression empathetic. "Well, if you ever need to talk, or just escape for a bit, you know where to find me." Her words stayed with me as I walked home. It wasn't that I was looking for anything new, but the simple act of reconnecting with someone who saw me for who I was, not as part of a broken marriage, felt like a step toward healing. Weeks turned into months, and I found myself growing more comfortable in my new life. I started therapy, not for the marriage, but for myself. It was tough to confront the emotions I'd buried over the years, the feelings of inadequacy, the fear of being alone, but it was worth it. For the first time, I felt like I was finally getting to know myself again. Amanda and I stayed in touch, but the conversations became less frequent. When we did talk, it was civil, even friendly, but the spark that once defined our relationship was gone. We both knew it, though neither of us said it aloud. One day, Amanda called and asked to meet for coffee. I hesitated but agreed, curious about what she wanted to say. When we sat down, she looked calmer than I'd seen her in months. "Ryan," she began, her voice steady. "I just wanted to thank you for everything. For forgiving me, even when I didn't deserve it. For giving me the space to figure things out." I nodded, unsure of where she was going. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she continued, "and I've realized that I need to let you go. I've been holding on to the hope that we could fix things, but I see now that it's not fair to either of us. You deserve to be happy, and so do I." Her words hit me harder than I expected, but not in a painful way. They felt freeing. "I think you're right," I said finally. "We've both grown in ways that don't fit together anymore. But I hope you find what you're looking for, Amanda." She smiled, tears brimming in her eyes. "You too." As I walked away from that coffee shop, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. The story with Amanda was over, but my story was far from finished. Life was still messy, still unpredictable, but for the first time, it felt like mine again. And that was enough.